is the future. The Everwar is a distant memory. It is a life of automation and pleasure amongst the stars. Welcome to your Topia. Humanity now lives in perfect robotic bodies. They are immortal, free from worry, free from disease, but they are not free at all. Headlander! This fantastic future world is ruled by an advanced artificial intelligence known as Methuselah. No one knows what it wants or why it has enslaved humanity. But this prison of plastic and fiberglass is about to change forever. Headlander! The last flesh and blood person has just been revived. But they're just ahead, living in a helmet that is a scientific miracle. With this helmet, our hero can thrust through the air, remove those pesky heads, and dock into their neck holes and take the wheel. Headlander! But Methuselah wants them at any cost. And with an army of soulless automatons, equipped with the latest in laser technology, what chance does our hero have? But with help from Earl, a friendly voice in the helmet radio, and Crystal 9 and her group of rebel soldiers, it's going to be one hell of a fight.
Well, Headlander looks great. Looks like Lee's got that under control. Nothing else for me to do here. I'm taking off. Later, Gators.
Wow. Amazing.
Woo! We're live. Hello, welcome to the Double Fine Action Show Headlander Launch Day Spectacular. That's believe what it's called, right?
Yes.
We're going to meet the team behind the game. I'm going to have my audio checked. We are going to have live music performances. We're going to look at the influences of Headlander, and we're going to have a jolly good time.
Yeah.
Sitting to my left, two wonderful Double Fine employees, masters of game design.
Right.
Lee Petty, product lead on Headlander, and Mr. Greg Rice, our VP of Biz.
Yeah.
Hello, guys. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Launch day.
Launch day, woo! Congratulations, Lee. You
Thank
did
you.
a good one.
It's
And
out.
congratulations to our Double Fine audience.
Yay!
Hey! First up, I think Lee is going to talk about the history of how the game came to be. We're going to have some Q&As throughout as well and give out some codes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand over to Greg Rice now. How you doing,
Perfect,
Mr.
perfect.
Mr. Rice?
It's out. It's out on
Yes.
Steam. It's out on PlayStation 4. But it's been a long road to get here. So maybe we should go all the way back. Where did we start with Headlander?
Like as a child in the 1970s?
Yes,
like
let's
that.
start from the very beginning. No, I mean, I think people know about it from Amnesia Fortnite. Is my mic not on?
This is awesome.
But
Mic checking is the best feature of this.
I'm going to check my own mic right now.
Check, check.
Come on. Hello.
I do that more
Come
than
on
I
now.
should, actually.
Yeah, no, so I think people might know about it from Amnesia Fortnite, but we had a little bit of Headlander stuff going on even before that. So I feel like we should just start with, I guess, the prototype and video stuff that we did early on.
Yeah. Well, it was, I think the first time Headlander as an idea came out was in 2011. So in February 2011, we shipped stacking.
And
Good game.
and Tim and I were talking about like other ideas that we might pitch around or other ideas I had, and I was saying to Tim, I really love 70s science fiction, and I really want to do a 70s science fiction game. And he's like, well, what would it be about? And I was like, well, it's like a head. And he was like, a head in a jar? A head on a gorilla? That's terrible. And I was like, no, it's going to be good. And then he said, well, pitch it to me in 2 weeks. So I put a little presentation together and pitched it to Tim, and he liked it. So we thought that we should do some prototyping, as you normally do when you start a game off. But at that point, every programmer in the building was busy on other games. And so I had a few artists and animators who weren't busy at the time for a few weeks. And what we did was we put together, because ideally you develop a prototype not only to prove the game out to yourself and start thinking about it, but also to have something a little more concrete to show publishers, right? And so what we did instead
Which was the idea from the beginning with this one, right? Like that was the intent. We were going to take this around and show it to publishers to try to get some publisher money.
Well, this is before Broken Age.
Yeah.
Right. This is before the Kickstarter happening.
Yeah.
I almost said crappening. That's something else for. Anyways, so we put together a little video, and it was just a trailer that tried to like. I mean, we didn't have a ton of time. I think we had 3 weeks, and so it was sort of like we did all the visual design and look for the game, and thought about like the very base appeal of one of the core mechanics, and put together the video. So the game obviously changed a lot since then, but it was. I think it was pretty successful.
Yeah, I think we're gonna take a look at that in a second. But I'm curious, actually, you brought it up. We're coming off stacking, and we're seeing a lot of reviews coming in now that are kind of referencing stacking and similarities between the mechanics. I was wondering how much that was intentional versus it just kind of came out naturally.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I probably have an unhealthy obsession with possessing other people or wanting to go inside their soul or something. Soul. I don't know. No, so certainly it would be on my mind because we were making the game, right?
Yeah.
But it was weird. It was kind of parallel in some ways, and the emphasis on Headlander is different than the emphasis on stacking. But there certainly was like trying to. I guess I also enjoy when people are into certain themes and kind of build different works around some of those themes. So. Yeah, I think that's what. So we're certainly aware of it. It wasn't like, hey, did you know that
We can just reuse all the
we
same
can just
mechanics.
reuse it? Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we have the video. So this was actually originally done to some different music. We've rescored it now, but originally it was David Bowie's song.
It's copyrighted music.
Yes, which we
right?
can't show on Twitch.
Of
But you
course.
guys should all queue up. It was Space Odyssey, right?
Yeah, the Major Tom song.
Major Tom, yes. So cue that up.
Headlander
Hit
is a
play
third-person
right
action
now.
adventure game set in a future world inspired by late
Yeah,
60s
if you do it
science
just
fiction.
right. There's a big transition
You
in
play
the
a
song that
20th century
correlates
man
right
who
to
awakes in
the
this world with only his head intact. A special helmet allows you to launch his head from his body, fly it around, land into, and take control of the robot bodies of enemy forces. Headlander is a humorous take on a sci-fi world where your head holds the key to saving what is left of humanity from the unfeeling machine guts of a deranged computer.
Clearance granted. Please proceed to docking bay 9. Welcome to Zephyr 7. Enjoy the solitude. A new life awaits you on Zephyr 7. Security breach.
They have music, right, Paul? Wonderful. So after that, of course. Yes, wonderful. Cheers. I'm sure Amnesia Fortnite, everybody voted for it, got picked up. We made it an Amnesia Fortnite, right?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. But I decided,
People are fools. Somehow it did not get voted for. I'm not sure, but it lives on.
it lives on.
It lives on. Yeah, and actually you see a lot of stuff in there that made its way into the game.
Yeah, I mean, the helmet design and the hero, one of the heroes' heads, I really liked that. It was like this weird space. I remember we were talking about designing it, and Levi did a lot of the visual design on that head, and we were talking about that it was sort of like a little bit like Michael York, a little bit like Mick Jagger. There's a little tiny bit of Bowie in there with some lamb chops, and then it had to be a white fiberglass helmet. It just had to be. So yeah, that kind of like that stayed, and
Shepherd body was similar. We had some bouncing lasers in there.
some bouncing lasers, yeah. And then there was also the there was of course every game starts out with a hacking mini game that always gets cut. So there was a hacking mini game in there with the opening the doors or systems, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but after this, I guess we did pitch it around to publishers, and we're having a hard time getting people to buy it at the time. And then Broken Age happened, I guess, and it kind of got sidelined for a little bit.
Yeah, well, we originally were pitching the game as a larger game.
Yeah.
Right. We weren't thinking it was going to be sort of a side scroller Metroidvania. Originally, we were picturing kind of more of a third-person game because we were trying to develop a bigger game at the time. But what we found at that time in the market. I sound so professional. At that time, people were really reticent to sign bigger projects. And so there was a lot more interest in the emerging digital world of game distribution. And so, but. Yeah, so that's how that kind of wound up changing. So we kind of put that on the shelf for a while, and I helped out Broken Age for 1 month, right? Wasn't the original idea?
Was it going to be that short originally?
Maybe 2 months.
It became a lot longer.
Yeah, and then it was longer, and then right towards the end of Broken Age,
we let you free.
Yeah, we were working on multiple things at once, including Headlander.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Adult Swim came by and saved the day, picked it up. They were smart enough to see the potential.
I was going to say insane enough. It was interesting because I do remember when you pitch games to people, a lot of times you'll show the demo and talk about the game, and I do remember one group of people we pitched it to said, "I like everything but the head part." And I was like, "So you like shooting lasers?" They're like, "That is good." And I was like, "Well," whereas, but like Adult Swim, they're like, "Well, yeah, I could get really weird," and that was like a positive thing, right?
Yeah,
like they're very interested in it.
Yeah. And so I think we have, I guess we're going to get into start of development, starting with art and look design. And we've got Derek, who's been painting for the last 30 minutes or so on the stream. I can't actually see it because it's such a little tiny thumbnail, but I'm sure it's gorgeous and wonderful. And we're going to have, Derek on to talk about art. But I think before that, we have a video that I'm not sure what it's about, but Two Player made some lovely video. We're all going to watch it together. Maybe.
Oh.
Oh, this is okay. Inspiration.
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
I'm not sure. What do you think?
I've got a bad feeling about him.
You do?
Yeah, definitely. Don't you?
I don't know. I think so. We'd have to cut his higher brain functions without disturbing the purely automatic and regulatory systems. And we'd have to work out the transfer procedures of continuing the mission under ground-based computer control.
All right, we've got friends now, new friends. New
Hello.
friends, Derek, who's been on painting over here on his beautiful Cintiq, and Levi. You guys did mostly concept art, I would imagine, for Headlander, correct?
Yeah, Emily also helped, and Raz helped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, the game has a wonderful art team, and led by Lee, who's art director at the studio and project lead. I think the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit is kind of inspiration, because I feel like we want to get into characters and creation of the world and everything, and a lot of that seems to stem from what we just saw, which is 70s sci-fi, and you have a whole pile
Look at
of
this,
movies
a
here
little
on
pile
your
of
lap.
movies. This is a short selection of movies. Here we go. We watched 2001, which of course I think is not here, but an amazing movie. But you know, it was interesting because we watched a movie about every 2 weeks. We'd watch a movie. We'd kind of sit up at lunch and kind of get to introduce people to a lot of 70s science fiction that maybe they hadn't seen. And there's all these films are. So we've got like. Silent Running and Rollerball and Barbarella and Colossus and THX 1138, Zardoz, Dark Star, Star Crash, The Mega Man, Eulomia, all sorts of films here. And a lot of these films, although some of them are borderline, I think Black Hole is actually 1980 maybe. But you know, one of the things that I think we always talked about when we're doing concepts, and a lot of these films have here, is just the idea that 70s science fiction had this really weird intersection of existentialist anxiety about technology and just complete stupidity. And I think we were like, yeah, we want both of those. And I remember every time you guys would work on a concept, we'd be like, yeah, but is it stupid enough?
Yeah.
You know, like,
is
is
a
it
stupid factor that like sometimes we would not get enough.
it's that weird, like the world is changing and we know there's this thing called technology and computers and lasers, but we're not really sure what it means or really how they work. And so there's all these like far-flung fantasies that don't necessarily make any sense nowadays. And I'm sure we're doing the same thing nowadays in other fields that maybe we're not aware are completely stupid to people 30 years from now. But it basically made it really charming, right? And so we were always looking for that little charming angle in the concepts. You know?
And it was really fun having all those movies to talk about where we were going with visual design also, because like you could say that this one is a little too 2001 and it needs to be 10% more Barbarella, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, when things got a little too serious.
Yeah, I feel like I would initially try to do something that was cool, you know, and then you would always have to remind me, like, it has to be stupid too. Like, you have to put in a little bit of stupid.
Basically, let's translate that. I was making something really awesome, and then Lee came by and pissed on it. But that's kind of my job.
I think it made it better. It made it more interesting.
Funny. So we have a slideshow here of some of the concepts. I think these are first a selection of Derek pieces.
That's Levi.
This is Levi? It was a Derek folder.
okay.
We got
This
fooled.
isn't just like the Macintosh auto screen images.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can click through them here, but if you guys
That's
have
the
anything
archives.
specific to say, yeah, this is the
archives.
archives. I'm not
Archives
spoil
are
too
fun,
much.
yeah.
People might not have necessarily played all the way through. So
Not
There's a
many
little spoiler.
chess-based levels in games these days.
Yeah.
It's true.
Fun to do.
Yeah.
This was also a lot based on old tech and like chess computers as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we always had this thing that, again, doesn't make any sense. We had this idea that underneath it all, somehow this world was entirely analog. Like they never invented digital technology, which I know doesn't really make any sense. But I think like one intersection of that, we were looking at these old chess computers from the 70s and 80s and 60s, and these really weird little electronic like one-off things.
Punch cards, reel to reel. Yeah.
And like this, it was like a home product, and it was like, you know, play chess against, and they'd always, even then, I think they always sort of hinted that the intelligence inside the chess machine you were playing against, which was just a very simple system, right, was somehow smarter than you and really malevolent, but didn't have like limbs to kick your ass. Or, you know, it was like somehow in there.
If only it did.
Yeah. It was a weird, ominous undertone to that. Like, you know, see how smart you are against this chess computer.
Oh, this one is definitely not mine.
Yeah,
This is not mine.
Lee, do you have anything to say about this one?
Well, Derek has
inspirations?
certain interests, certain go-to shapes.
I drew a few shapes, and then I was like, well, that'd be funny if there were balls in the back of it. But I don't know.
Yeah, if only we had room for a third ball. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's just that cylinders are easy to draw in perspective, right?
Yeah,
You just hit a button in
Here's
Maya
some
and
marquee tool and
it's there, right?
It's the escape pod. Nice. Yeah, that's the one of the first areas in the pleasure port. And we did used to have that bigger hatch there, and we switched it to the sort of two-blade covers that you suck off instead of that hatch, right?
Right.
There was more of a story point. I still haven't figured out how to say that without sounding obscene.
Yeah.
The story point behind sucking
You
off.
carefully use your tractor beam to remove.
Yeah.
But I remember, well, Jeff can talk about the collision fun we had.
This
By the way,
area
just don't
ended
put
up-
doors in games ever.
Area
That's my
ended up
advice.
looking a lot like this too, actually. This whole
Yeah.
section. Yeah. And same with
Mine too.
this.
That was the first sort of big room
Yeah.
we wanted to. We were trying to figure out like because the first part of that pleasure report is very much borrowed from like Logan's Run and Barbarella. It's that sort
The
of side
mall
of the
that
game.
they took
The
over
mall,
in the
right.
70s,
And Logan's
and-
Run was filmed in a mall,
Yep.
right? So we. I think this is when we really started trying to figure that out, right? It wasn't the
Yeah.
first stuff you drew. That was the satellite chalet things, but
Yeah, this was very quickly after that.
But I think we talked about those guys floating in those balls back there. The
Yeah.
characters were like, "What are they doing?" I don't know. It's
Yeah.
they're enjoying zero G.
hanging out. Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
like why you'd enjoy zero G in a fiberglass body. I'm not sure.
This one has a little bit of a silent running vibe going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was that area, which is the Rogue Eye, the Rebel Base area, actually has the most it's the only real place we have a lot of organic shapes. I mean, not curved shapes, but like there's a lot of actual plants there and more human scale detail because we wanted the rebels to be the most human of the citizens, right? And so they're the most cogent. They have things you might actually want as a human being versus like a carpeted room.
Delicious
Yeah.
coconuts.
Delicious
Yes,
coconuts.
you put the
I don't think. Do we put
Yeah.
the coconuts there? I don't think so.
This is
Yeah,
an
I think they
award-winning
made it.
piece right
It
here, I
is.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From Derek, won
Yeah.
Into the Pixel
Satellite.
this year.
it did.
Yeah.
Satellite
Actually
Chalet.
did. The satellite chalet.
Yeah.
And you were
Yeah.
saying this is one of the first pieces you did?
Yeah.
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 Set the tone.
I like it. It looks like he's writing some Christmas letters to somebody. You know? Like he's got this nice warm.
I think
basking in-
Anna was saying, which I really enjoyed, that he was checking. She thought he was checking his social media again. Or something.
Yeah, that's right. The shepherds don't really have. We never really explored what connections they have to each other.
Yeah.
Like, we just try to keep all of their communication only in line of sight or through those Methuselah speakers. Like they never invented any sort of cell phone automated email. They just have to like go to each other and talk in robot voice back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's slideshow.
There was
I think
do you remember that? Like there was an earlier part of the game where we had a little more. I won't say we had stealth, but we had a little more where the shepherds didn't always attack you if you were in a shepherd body. And so we had all this dialogue written for them talking to each other. Like they'd say shepherd things to you, and it was just always like presence acknowledged, affirmations recognized, like just really stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at that! There's some more. That's some Levi
I
action.
love it that they they
gonna
just
put these down.
talk about themselves as unit.
Yes.
Unit does
They
not
do
like
refer
that.
themselves as unit. Actually, the enforcers are the ones that call themselves unit consistently.
All right.
And they're more advanced, so they actually have some first person. You know, they refer to the shepherds dialogue. They never refer to themselves as
It's
an
a
entity.
collective,
It's
right?
just it's just a like do this, do that.
Like here's proof of other shapes of
That's
ships.
true.
You're right.
Yeah. So Levi and Derek really were on the same vibe there. That one marked T. I think I've seen that hanging in a package on a store shelf at some place, perhaps. It's pretty good.
That one.
No, that's pretty close to the final design.
Yeah.
More
chest,
Yeah, this is just
the
lots of
material.
materials in the game, so calling out.
We
what's-
also
what's
were trying to
fuzzy.
put helmets everywhere. That was the helmet, the fireplace, the fire in the fireplace looks like the helmet.
Just need one model.
Very
Go as far
first.
as you can with one model, and
Yeah,
you'll be
then you
done
get some
in no
like
The
time.
ring or something.
Get
here.
some creepy stuff.
Yeah,
we got
these
some
are
characters.
these are the bodies that Methuselah was doing lots of
Experimentation on.
I like the
yeah.
ones with the
Stuff
arm
with-
coming out of the butt. That's my personal
Yeah,
favorite.
yeah, but
insert.
That's
Good
our
old insert
first-
over there.
yeah, if you look closely, the centaur in the game is actually made up of two bodies.
That's the only way to do it, right?
Sure.
People got mad at me that I tied the jacket and it was hanging down like that. So
Uh,
people got very mad at me about that.
Yeah. Jared simulated that hanging thing.
Yeah, a lot of work went into that.
So many cool patches.
Yeah.
I want this one on a jacket.
That patch is actually on the shoulder of all the shepherds,
Yeah.
at least the red through yellow guys.
If you zoom in, use the zoom button.
Logos everywhere. Actually, there's some good.
I have no idea why Audrey Hepburn is down in the corner of that one. That was pretty interesting.
Well, I remember we were talking about that character.
Yeah.
We were talking about we wanted a character with Asian features, but we also were trying to we wanted like we were talking about Twiggy and Audrey Hepburn, like
Right.
trying to play on some of those looks, which were kind of interesting at the time, and not like
Twiggy we used for the Kill Queen.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get that kind of like really, really obvious eyes. There she is. Yeah, she has that very, very. It's almost like a Clockwork Orange kind of eye, right? Where you've got the eyelashes all separated and
it's true.
Lots of makeup popping off of them and accentuating them.
Yeah.
This is how long it took to make the game. So when we started off,
you looked that way.
we had Eddie Murphy from what's it called?
That's some serious. Did you
Nights.
put giant lamb chops on the female head? Down there?
Yeah. This was like I was just getting bored at this point because the ones on the top, I was like, oh, I'm sick of doing heads, and then I was like, man, if these guys have been in stasis this long, all of them have beards, right? So, they all got bearded up in the bottom.
Oh man, this was my favorite Citizen outfit, and I remember
okay. Well,
I remember I was trying to describe the jacket.
You pitched it to me.
Yeah, I'm like, there's this jacket that was super popular that like Burt Reynolds and other people wore, and it's this ridiculous silver thing, and it has like Porsche on the arm, but then they later made him. It's called the Watkins jacket.
And
right?
yes, and we finally found one of them somewhere. It might have been one of these, maybe Burt Reynolds. And then it just started coming out of the woodwork. Everybody and their mom happened to have one of these. Michael Jackson's got it here. Like, yeah, it turned out pretty good though. Yeah, more Crystal 9.
Lady Crystal 9.
Finger lasers, that didn't end up making its way in. That was always fun.
Just for the Queen, she's got giant finger lasers.
Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't really notice. You don't zoom in far enough to.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
There's some awesome pawn designs here. Some enforcers. This is Levi's.
So much art.
So much art.
So much art. We gotta make a book and figure it out.
We do have a lot. We have a lot we didn't use too.
I think is the end of our.
You have a couple of questions.
Do we have questions? So people who are asking us questions, you may get a free code of the game if you're lucky. So please put questions in the chat, and Spout's going to list them off. What do you got?
Let's see. The original trailer was in 3D, but the current game is 2D. How was the game conceptualized in the earlier phase, and how did you bridge the gap?
So the question is, the original trailer was in 3D. The game became, the gameplay, I guess, 2D. How did you bridge the gap between those two concepts?
Well, I think that is one of the first things we did, which was start looking at it from the game camera and evaluating a lot from that. We did a lot of rough character models to try and find shapes we were happy with. Like we would do some pretty rough sketches, and Jared would do like a really rough model that had like terrible topology or whatever, because we were just trying to get it in the game and look at the shapes.
It's just Jared, though.
It's just Jared. It's Jared. He's like, whatever, edge loop, bitches. Yeah. So we put the stuff in there, and we would sort of evaluate. We went through a lot that way. And I think we were also trying to find the tone of the game visually, because we kind of were exploring a little more exaggerated, cartoony look for some of the characters. Mm-hmm. And even though our character, in the context of the game, looks relatively normal human proportion, if you actually look at those proportions, they're really pushed in a weird way.
He's like 9 heads tall.
Well, and his legs are like
12
70% of it, which the animators had fun with when they were trying to get in the cover or have him crouch. It's like, but basically that was the process. Is that whenever you have a sense of where your game's camera is to always work against that and to test stuff out as frequently as you can.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy with 2D because I'm trying to think of like how hard it would be to bounce a laser in 3D and actually have it bounce behind 3 times and then hit somebody in the back of the head. And
I think the game probably would have been a little less about laser bouncing and a little bit more about head exploration if it's been in third person.
True. Yeah. Thanks for the question. I don't know who that question was from, but maybe you got a code.
SL128.
SL128. Thanks. Do we have another one?
Sure. Barbarella obviously influenced things. Was any of that influence figuring out a way to put a hint of sexuality into the game? How was Barbarella influenced?
Who is that from? Spaff?
We'll come to it in a second.
Who's it from?
This is from R.H. Cooper.
R.H. Cooper.
Cooper.
Reed asks how Barbarella influenced sexuality.
Actually, Barbarella, I mean, on the nose there's a lot of influence there, but it really wasn't that big of an influence thing. We didn't really talk about Barbarella too much. There's just a few moments where we use it. Like, I would say actually, the interesting thing about 70s science fiction, or 70s movies in general, and sexuality is that it's just another aspect of, there's a lot going on, culturally at the time. There's still a lot going on with sexual liberation. There's a lot of civil unrest and all that sort of stuff still continuing from the 60s. And so a lot of that just sort of found its way as a basis of utopia. If you look at a movie like Logan's Run, where they're setting up utopia, they have that little circuit where they can kind of tune in their perfect mate. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting because it doesn't even, and even THX 1138, which is this really really dystopian world, there's still like this masturbation machine scene that George Lucas like remastered. Like, I don't know if you've seen the remastered version. They actually added a little device that comes down while he's watching this weird dance routine. So like there's
now
other
that we have HD.
HD. And there's a lot of subtle touches of that there, but I think it was just one of those incongruous things. And for us, when the whole world's in these fiberglass bodies and they're kind of androgynous, right? We try to just mix and match it and not like over push any particular gender that way. And it was just like this utopian thing. So the fact that there would even be sexuality in these sort of like, gym-controlled robots was even more ludicrous, and it just felt right. Like it was like, well, why would that be there? Like, why would this machine do that? But it is one of those things you see there. And before science fiction kind of shifted away to everything being at night, it was all at the day during the day.
Well, thanks for the question, Reed. The one that Lee, I'm sure, wanted to answer this whole time. You got the right one. Awesome. Well, we've got 2D art now. Now we're going to start building up some 3D art. I think we're going to have some folks from the art team come talk about world building. But thanks for joining us, guys. Yeah. And while we shuffle around, I think we got another inspiration video from Two-Player.
I haven't skied in ages.
I don't care for that. This is what I mean. This, a bed.
That? But nobody's done that for centuries. I mean, nobody except the very poor who can't afford the pills and the psychocardiogram readings.
Why not?
Because it was proved to be distracting and a danger to maximum efficiency. And because it was pointless to continue it when other substitutes for ego support and self-esteem were made available.
So, you won't do it?
Well, if you simply must insist, I guess so.
All right, new guests. We've got Jeremy and Jeff, world builders on the project. Hi, guys. Welcome. You built a beautiful game. So I think we're going to talk about
Lee.
Yes, of course. Lee also did some world building, I'm sure. I think we have a few things to talk about here, but it looks like you guys got some examples, and I think we just want to talk about taking those concepts and turning them into 3D in the game.
I mean, you guys want to talk a little bit about, it's we had a whole lot of world to build. I don't know if you guys have played it, but it's it's like an 8 or 10 hour game, and you run really fast and fly really fast, and it only gets faster. And we had to build that all, basically 2 modelers in the project. These 2 fine gentlemen here, and so when we should talk about how you approach that. You're like, hey, here's this beautiful thing Derek painted.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of one continuous thing mostly, right, too?
Whenever you got a piece of concept art, you always had to look at it and be like, okay, what can I break out of here and use other places? Because you're always trying to reuse as much as possible without making it super obvious.
Yeah, it was built really modularly.
Jeff, flip on your mic.
The game was built really modularly, so it was kind of nice. You could just build a room, and then we could use that room in other places. So it sped up like the production like a lot.
I was surprised though, you don't see rooms repeating as much as you could in these types of games, right? So even though there were like elements that would get pulled into other rooms, it did feel like a lot of them had their own shape and had little pieces that were thrown in to kind of give some differentiation.
Color grading helped a lot too.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. So
yeah, we worked pretty hard at that too. I mean, we always talk about this too, but it's really hard, I think, in games for me, I really like just being in worlds. Like, you know, of course, all the other elements, the gameplay and the story and all that are great, but I just like feeling like I'm in an active.
Your noggin still intact?
That appeal is always just seeing different areas, and it's really hard to ever, if you try to make a really homogeneous looking game, it's really hard to ever get that attraction for keeping moving forward back, even if everything else is stellar. I tend to lose interest in it, and so it's not really just about art, right? But it's about like helping drive that interest and telling little background stories with the sets.
Well, and having like a sense of space too. Like the pleasure port is so huge that each area sort of has its own look, and you know, from the concept art, you sort of develop this sort of palette of objects and foreground and background that you sort of build each area out of, and that's, you know, we tried to do that as much as possible because we did get into like in the prototyping phase, like, you know, there would be a layout, and then Jeremy and I would take the level layout, and sort of build art on top of that based off of concept art and other things. And so
what were the level layouts built from? They were called
Legos.
Oh,
Yes,
Legos.
they were called Legos.
which was Gabe's
Patented.
term.
Yeah.
But then we have all these folders that say Legos, and they're all these block mesh pieces.
Yeah.
Together.
And so it's taking a bunch of block mesh that all kind of look like stuff from the Power Dome, for the most part, and then trying to replace them, and like making sure that we actually replace them. I wish our Legos were way uglier, so we knew for sure. That was the one thing that
I mean, it was nice that we could use the Legos, like, because it was just like a block in most cases. Like, they could build the level, and like we would just art those things up like independently. Like, it wouldn't mess anything up, and like it wouldn't screw up the workflow and all. So it was kind of nice that we built the game that way.
The tube-ways stuff was, we did that real early, and it didn't change much. I mean, the layouts changed, but the art on them did not change much.
Yeah, that was definitely
some lighting tweaks and things like that.
Oh, for sure. But
I'm surprised you guys didn't talk about Derek's balls when you were in the
well,
he's in the 2D section. Yeah.
He's a little shy.
Yeah.
Prone to performance anxiety.
Those are all the Derek balls,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So in the foreground of all of the tube-ways are.
There is a profundity of Derek's balls in the game.
There's a lot of shafts and balls.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, it's just there in the background for those people who enjoy those things. It's really not part of the core gameplay.
No. It was fun building props, like, because people will walk by when I'm building a thing. I'm like, what the hell are you making? Because it's just this long shaft with like a little round part at the bottom of it.
What was the favorite thing you guys modeled? Like, is there some area that you really enjoyed the way, either the process or the final product?
The shuttle in the intro. That's probably one of my favorite things. And then also the high five room. The most unseen room in the entire game.
That's true. We had that one kind of late.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we added it just because I was like, high fives are such a huge 70s thing. There's no high fives in here. And I wanted some way to interact with the citizens, even a small little tiny hidden way that I wasn't just listening to them like rub on carpet. Right? I was like, well, this is like, it's one of those few moments of human contact with the citizens.
Yeah.
Where you're like, you can high five. And then it's devoid of any meaning. But you're just like, yeah. So we had to do it at the high five lounge in there.
Yeah, that one is great. It's so weird, but it was really fun to put together.
Yeah. Do you want to take a look at some of these examples you have brought up?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the lighting and color grading a tiny bit.
We touched on that a little bit in our last Double Fine stream, but
cool
process.
It's interesting. So, I mean, we had a lot of rooms. I think we had about 200 rooms, and you know, and some of those were single screen rooms, and some of them were very elaborate rooms, and some of them were like a maze of two ways. And so, you know, we had to light and color grade all of those things. And because we were using some pieces, that was going to be a big part of the look of the game. So this is a screenshot here of the hookah lounge. It's one of the earlier areas in the game, and this is just a screenshot of it with kind of everything on it. But if you turn off a couple of these things, just to show you guys a little bit. Is this one going next? All right, so this is the same scene, and all I've done here is turn off the lights. And we do use, our lighting was 100% dynamic, and that was partly because lighting workflows in games are the worst thing ever. They're basically this bastard workflow that hampers design and art because there's a lot of rebaking and everything. So early on, we were like, notice all of our lights are 100% dynamic, and we do cache shadow maps and things like that, but we're not baking anything. We're just putting these lights in there, and we can manipulate them in real time. And it did put limitations on the look, so we couldn't rely on lighting as much by itself. So you'll see here I turned off the lights, and if you go back and forth, it's not in this particular room, it's not a giant part of the look. There's with lights, there's without. But oh wait, there's without. So what you're seeing there still is a lot of this color grading. And if I, this is with bloom gone, and then this is with color grading off, right? And so what you're seeing here is we have depth-based color grading, so we could have all these different layers and define a pretty complex set of variables about how those colors be remapped to change the look. Every room could have that unique, even if they're using similar assets. And just to show you the difference here too, so if I turn off, this is the lighting with no color grading. It's like a very neutral color grading, right? So we're not manipulating the scene at all. And you know, we relied on color grading so heavily so early on. We had it pretty early on that we really based a look about it. So it doesn't, of course, really hold up too well with it off because we were always looking at it as we developed it. And that was real-time adjustable as well. Yeah. And that was good because there was a whole lot of rooms to light and color grade and not a lot of time to do it all. And there's like the so you can see the difference there. So it's best seen all when you're lighting it, but it was a really great system and made some great graphics programmers.
And we should mention, so this is not on Unreal or Unity. This is our own custom engine that we built for Brutal Legend and been using throughout the years. This is potentially the final project on the engine as well.
I think this is it.
Is it Swan Song or Death Rattle? I don't know which one is more.
Viking Funeral, maybe?
Viking Funeral. Yeah, we haven't actually lit it.
Was any of this stuff written specifically for Headlander, or is this all stuff we had in place?
Well, quite a lot of it was written for Headlander, but it was based on, you know, a lot of times you try and build on certain things you have. Like the shag carpeting stuff was written for Headlander. Oliver wrote that. And the color grading was partly written for another project. But it wasn't really depth-based, you know. It's kind of like, but the basic framework for being able to kind of bring a screenshot into Photoshop and manipulate it and have the game update in real time, then basically save that data out had existed for other projects.
Yeah. I think we're going to take some more questions. So if you guys have questions for the world builders, you should pop them in the chat. But while we let that populate, were there any particular challenges that you guys faced that you want to talk about? Anything that you had to kind of fight through? Something that was tricky specifically on Headlander?
Well, I mean, obviously in the end, just making sure that there were no tiny little spots that a tiny little head could get out of the level and fly around. There were a couple that snuck through at the end there that we fixed up.
Or someone could smack your head through a wall. That was always
for a while there, you could just go fast enough that you would just fly through a wall or push yourself through collision. That was great. I mean, there was just a lot of world. Yeah. That was probably the most challenging part, was just getting it all in.
Problem we often face. I meant at Double Fine we often have a small world team with a lot of things to do. You guys are terrible.
I like this room too because this was like the first room that was ever made.
Freddie
right?
Lee, we should mention.
And like it hasn't changed much since like throughout
that
the whole
light
process.
pole in the background, right? Was the first thing I designed on paper for this game. That was It was the tall light pole. I think it was called Tall Light _A. I think was the name of it.
There's some example objects that we made for like pre-pro that made it into the Satellite Chalet. Those little computers.
Oh yeah.
That were all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Some
I
stuff
did
has always
make Derek's fireplace. That painting that was built at one point. I think it's still in the background.
It's in there somewhere. Yeah. I mean, that was the weird part too. Was it not like how much detail do you want to put in? And it's weird because it wasn't that our goal was to put lots of high frequency detail in there.
Yeah.
We did want the world to feel like those were different rooms you could explore. Like there was just little tiny things to notice, and so a lot of them we were just sneaking in little references to either the backstory or other inspirations or just funny stuff that you might see.
Yeah. And like one of the hardest things was there was supposed to be this idea that the world you see is like high tech and pristine and clean, and then when you get into the tubeways, it's sort of maybe a little dingier or run down or sort of dilapidated. I think that the moon base was probably more successful in that, even though the moon base as a whole was kind of just jacked up. And I wish I think if we would have had, if I would have had more time to focus on it, I would have probably done that a little bit more for the tubeways inside of the pleasure port, you know, like panels falling off and other weird stuff happening and things like that.
Yeah, and it is. You're right. You know, that was a big part of that. And when you land in the pleasure port, one of those first rooms you fly through is this large cavernous room, which we called the Darrow tubes, referring to Jeff Darrow and his fixation with fetishistic detail. But we wanted to put that early on when you get to you're supposed to be going to like this utopian port, and the first thing you go through is like this weird. And a lot of those are based on like transistors and vacuum tubes, and that we just sort of blew up and made these like large, weird, almost like underwater feeling things. And we'd always shift that palette to a cooler tones with red light, and then kind of come out into the warmer, bleached fiberglass stuff, right?
Yeah. Cool. You got a question for us, Spaff?
Sure. Buffington would like to know how tricky is it to go from concept art to match the final art with the rendering engine? Do you ever run into issues where the art has to be changed in order to work technically?
So Buffington, wonderful name, asks about translating the 2D art into 3D art, and if there's ever technical issues with that.
Well, there was one point in the project where Derek started using Modo as a base for his drawings. So for getting the perspective and scale right for everything got a lot easier after that point. But before that, it's just you're creating 3D space on a 2D plane in art, and the distances are never going to be perfect, or the scale of everything in there is never going to be perfect. So like reconciling the scale and distance of the background, because you're talking about taking something that you move back and forth, and you get a lot of parallax. So to match a piece of concept art, you kind of have to do some trickery to get it to look right. That's always that's just part of building the world.
It was nice that it was like a camera from this angle, so like you could just build. I mean, if you got the concept art could look like what you're building, like exactly.
I think it's a little more straightforward because of the camera framing.
Yeah.
And I think that's always one of the biggest disconnects in the game, and I think any game, and 3D game. I think part of it's how you just think about it. Like for me, concept art is just a step in the process, right? I think it's rare and usually not the best idea to like have a beautiful piece of art, just slavishly try and recreate that all the time, because ultimately it's not dynamic, and the game is. The camera's moving, people are moving, and there's a lot more information you get. And so a lot of times, we start with like a really nice piece of art, and some would take longer, especially if it was like a new area. And then we'd build it out pretty rough. We'd do a rough lighting pass. And then we'd often do drawovers on top of that, going, okay, well, we can see how it's playing now. Like, how do we do quickly, instead of making a pretty painting, like, how do we sort of, like, just add a few elements or move a few elements? And that's really quick to do with, like, a screen cap, right? So
I always try to make sure that, like, the area that I'm working on matches the way the piece feels, because that's what's the most important, right? Like, you chose that concept art to be in this area because it feels a certain way. And
had a lot of Derek's balls. For example.
Always.
Always. It's very egotistical of Derek. No, we're talking about it. It's like everywhere. Jeez.
And you always just want to translate that to the screen, into the game as much as possible.
Got one more? One more for us?
Sure. There's a couple of people who asked why the Buddha engine and not Unreal or Unity? What's the future for the Buddha engine?
Why are we using Buddha Engine on this rather than Unreal Unity, and what is the future for Buddha Engine?
Well, yeah, that's kind of a big question. I would say
the simple answer is that when we started the project, Unreal was transitioning from 3 to 4, and we weren't.
And we're 3.5. Fuck no.
Yeah. And we were not. We would have had to take a significant amount of time to switch off of the Buddha engine and move on to Unreal 4. To the point where the game wouldn't be anywhere near as done as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think traditionally, like when we worked on Brutal Legend, it was a different time in the industry, and you basically, if you're going to do a game you had to make your own tech. It was really the only real way to make a game like that.
Yep.
And I think once we had that engine, and a lot of really talented programmers who knew and helped build that engine, and we made a whole bunch of other games that were smaller in scope but worked well. And it's still a nice engine, but it's always challenging over time to keep your technology, contemporary with new platforms and such. So we at Headlander had some advantage because other games like Cosmic Quest 2 had done, and Massive Chalice had done some of the DX11 conversion that's necessary for modern platforms and 64-bit. So that helped us out to be able to use that.
Yeah, we've shipped a lot of games on it. We've been working it for a long time, and I feel like we always try to evaluate it project by project. And for now, we're moving to Unreal for Psychonauts, but who knows if something will come up in the future that makes more sense to just crank it out on Buddha. Maybe a sequel to an old game or something that's just well suited to it specifically. So who knows? Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to get some new folks up here. Thanks, guys.
What
for
the hell
joining
is
us.
Derek drawing?
I don't know. Yeah, we should check back in on that.
Oh no!
Wow. Something. We'll keep
Lord.
popping in on that for sure. But yeah, we're going to get some of the programmers and design folks up here while we watch another video.
Nice job.
I hope we get it.
Identify yourself. What is your type and model? Nice shot, Star. Yeah, try this. If one dances, one must pay the piper. If there's anything I cannot stand, it's a sore loser.
All right. I think we're back with new folks yet again. Hello, we've got Dave
citizens.
Miller, who's designer on the project, and Kichi, lead programmer on the project.
Hello.
Hi, guys. And we were just talking about Buddha Engine, so perfect timing.
Yeah.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah. So, so we've used the Buddha Engine a lot in the studio for so many different games and so many different Like there's a lot of prototypes that we use for it, and Ninja Fortnite. So we very much know how to use it. And I think part of the prototype we also made for Headlander used the Buddha engine. So we had a lot of assets from that and whatnot. So so it kind of was easy to transition from that prototype to still using the engine to make the full game. And it's kind of interesting how you kind of carry over the same methodologies from Brutal Legend into all the different games that we have.
By
And-
methodology, you mean me cursing at my computer and like, why isn't this working?
A lot of brute forcing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the cursing that's every morning.
It's like a chirping bird.
Yeah, it's
welcoming the day.
It's kind of weird if it doesn't happen. So anyway, but with making the games that we do with like smaller games, smaller teams, we end up having not as much resources for tools, which means that I make these guys use a lot of text editing without debugging. So so one interesting thing is Headlander involves a lot of bodies, controlling a lot of different bodies with different heads, and some of that methodology is used from in Brutal Legend. We called them co-ops. So what did we call it?
Double team.
Double teams. Where like you drive cars, so it's like one character controlling another character and having their animations sync up. So the heads and the bodies, they don't use the exact same code, but it uses kind of like the similar stuff. And
I think stacking did too, right?
Stacking did almost everything.
Yeah.
A lot of games kind of generally tended to use that. And I just put some animated GIFs of like we didn't ship it, but a way that we could just put any heads on any body. So there's a.
Cute he is.
Oh.
Angry dog.
Does anyone notice how the what's it called, the collar says dog on it?
It's D period O period G period. It's an acronym.
For what?
What does it stand for?
That's a secret, guys.
I know what the D stands for.
Diabolical.
Digital.
Digital. No, there's no digital technology in this game. There's some other.
There's another one.
Yeah, it was fun. Key, I came in one day and Key was giggling, and I was like, "So that's our." I think we called it the Zardos lover head on the shepherd body, a citizen head on the shepherd body. Key was giggling to him. I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" He's like, "Look at these heads!" And he was just putting weird heads on weird bodies all day long and giggling to himself.
And it was just like changing the text file to use like different spawned head on the body, and that was amusing. And if you also see on the head how the ponytail is simulated, that uses a similar tech from Brutal Legend with
that long hair.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare. And then. Oh yeah,
and
there's a dog head on the shepherd.
We actually
That's
should
cute.
just have had in the shipping game, I think.
We did discuss having an all dog head mode or some other variety of head modes.
Oh, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Never seen it. Look at that.
You don't want to
so
shoot
right.
that though.
Look at that.
How cute he is. Yeah.
Awesome. You have other good bugs in here too.
Well,
You guys wanna
and
talk about
then
this?
the other thing we did was we used kind of the same level editor. It's called the multi-user interface that we used in Brutal Legend and other games where you had an open world and you had placed different objects. It was called multi-user because lots of different users can use it, but we kind of haven't touched it too much. But Matt Enright, one of our programmers, he updated to call it the Nui. Did you come up with that name?
I tend to come up with
Probably.
names for things.
He does.
Yeah.
He comes with a lot of good names. Escapes
Which
Tail.
allowed users to kind of made that process faster, and we ended up using that a lot for the level design. If you want to talk about the level design process.
Yeah, I mean, early on, we were kind of designing things out and then handing it off to the world builders, and then we would kind of have to sit and wait for them to model it before we could judge what we were doing. So what we ended up doing, and I think this was your idea, Lee, but we came up with modular pieces, which we affectionately called Legos. And
that was him as well. Another naming thing by Gabe.
Yeah, and then we were able to kind of work concurrently with the world builder. So we would get out ahead, build a level in Legos, test it, play it, and when we got to a level of confidence, we could hand it off to the artists, and then they could just go nuts on it without having to worry about a lot of back and forth. So it made it a really smooth process for designing levels.
And then once we had those pieces built out, we stayed with that modular methodology, and we were like, oh, we need to add a room here for pacing.
we could just use those existing pieces and make, or a lot of the secret areas were made using existing pieces. We could just kind of build out.
And the world builders would actually build their art at the same dimension. They wouldn't just like build one big room. They would actually keep the Lego dimensions. So once those were built, we were able to take those and build new rooms that were complete without having to send it back to art because they were already arted. So that was cool.
And you're also able to like grab different pieces of the world and move it around in real time, right? While the game ran.
Yeah.
Some of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Half
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, we could. Our tools function in Maya as a layout tool, but also you could edit the game live, and they both have different limitations. And so some we would use both, and some were better. Like if you're doing a whole lot of snapping, moving around a lot of objects, you'd probably do it in Maya as a path. But once that's up and running, you could be playing the game and grabbing things and moving them around, or
If you just wanted to like scooch a dildo light to the left or something, you could do that
as one does
in the game without having to go into Maya and come back out.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to make sure that that's fast for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do tweak them quite a bit.
And the kind of the interesting result of using the Builder engine to put this together is, remember, we had to put everything in one tile.
Yes. Tiles.
Yes. So because Brutal Legends is an open world game, you have a bunch of tiles that streams in, and most games we've subsequently that we haven't used the open world concept for, we could fit everything onto one tile, which is, I forgot what the dimensions were.
It's a kilometer square.
Which didn't trigger a load. But this game, I think we want to minimize as much level loads as possible, so Pleasureport is a giant level.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you're doing a side view game like this, from just a like raw like real estate, you actually eat up a lot more real estate than on it, because there's no, you only have kind of switchbacks in 2 dimensions. So, in terms of if you're just looking at its footprint on a square footage, it eats it up really quickly. It becomes quite large. So I think that there were a few times we were like trying to keep it in the tile and, trying to make sure everything could stay in memory and could minimize loads.
Yeah, we had a spot in the moon base where we wanted this long run, and it was so long, it was like from one edge of the world to the other edge of the world, and we had to just like clamp it right there.
Key, do you have a particularly favorite bug you'd like to discuss?
Yes! Gabe also named this bug.
Yes. Yeah. So we had this bug that came in. It was initially on the PS4, and we're getting this report, and it was on the release build, so we didn't actually have any debug information. We only saw what happened when the bug happened, and we got this bug where in different parts of Moonbase, if you happen to die, the spawners that spawn enemies just never shut off, but only after you die once. And we started looking into the spawner code to see like, okay, how is this even possible and whatnot. And just looking at the videos just was, we almost should have left the bug in, other than people wouldn't.
If it didn't explode,
they made us want to turn it into a shmup,
yeah,
like Ikaruga or
So
something.
can we,
it's like
can
a
we
bullet
show
hell.
some of the?
Yeah, do you have an original one you want to see first?
No, any of them.
All right, so, and then Gabe turned all these bugs the crappening.
Yes, the neighbor of
things.
things.
You can kind of see why.
Oh, good.
Is that?
That's a screenshot.
So that's a
after
screenshot.
They all blew up.
That looks like an Arkham wipe.
It does look like a lot of bats.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got here.
That is cool.
Next.
Yeah, I think you have to click on the other thing.
Oh,
yes.
Look at that.
Boo.
Watch me try and use Windows. So I mean that.
OG crappening.
OG crappening. So we're going to look at OG crappening. All right, so players died, and they're respawning here. Let me make this son of a...
And you see that stream of shepherds because...
Yeah, that person is
still pretty amazing.
In dire situation. So we'll play that again. So yeah.
I mean...
So what happens here is the player he dies, walks into the room, and... from a spawner in the ceiling, an endless crap horde of shepherds. And then they're all firing.
And then they
like,
notice
hey,
you.
There's someone here. Here's a bunch of hardware particles to crash your game. So yeah, that was good. There's a few more of them, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. That was that's where the term crappening came from. OG crappening, that one is. So let's see what we got here for this one.
Oh, that's the rebels. You see the rebels spawning?
Yeah. See all those rebels lined up now?
They're spawning in the middle and like pushing each other out slowly.
It's kind of like a big...
It's like an accordion of rebels, like a domino setup of rebels. It's like the bailing of a blue whale.
It's like a rebel centipede.
A rebel centipede. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Gabe, for that.
And like you see the frame right there. I'm leaving this room so the game doesn't crash. Make the video bigger.
Will he make it?
Oh man, you guys, make the video bigger. All right.
There we go.
Okay. Well, now that it's
made it.
over, it's quite large. There you
Nope.
go. All right.
It's still there.
I'll play the next one of a larger size. Sorry, everyone. Which one? Let's play this one. HS376.
That's the bug number.
That's it.
Oh,
Well,
I didn't name that one.
And those are
shielded shepherds
Yes.
that are all spawning in. And oh my lord,
Wow.
that's a bunch of lasers and shields and explosion. Are they shooting themselves? Oh, they're pushing each other into
Yes.
the continuous laser beams
Yes.
while firing their lasers.
Yes.
That's good.
It's
Okay.
it's a bug that's very thematic with the game somehow.
It's true.
Yeah. And then that one, I think it's a hunter that just keeps spawning.
I didn't name HS378.
So you get meleeed to death by the hunter, and then.
There we go.
Oh,
and
it's
crash.
And yeah, it didn't take long for them to crash. All right. Well, I think that's it for the crafting, right?
By the way, we fixed it.
We did fix that. Let's play the OG crafting one more time.
Or did we?
Because I love this one so much.
Yeah.
This is inspirational. And this one's
Oh,
look at that. And it just goes to show you how much undiscovered territory there is in video games if hardware was just way, way better to the point we never even thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, if it was just so ridiculously powerful and you're like, hey, what would it be like to just put 1,000 enemies just crapping on each other? We'd be like,
We did think briefly about actually doing that. It's just not technically possible.
It's not technically
You did?
Well, we didn't tell you.
I did.
Oh.
Hey, by the way, in the middle of the crappening, we are joined by Anna. So, hi, Anna.
Thank you. That was such a good intro.
Oh, good.
She snuck in.
Speaking of crap,
She snuck in the middle of the crappening.
Well, she spawned in that chair.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But just one of me.
just one of you. Yes. Well, there is only one Anna. That's right. Thank God. No. So we were, there. Key was talking about the Buddha engine, and Gabe's talking about naming things.
Oh, yeah.
Legos.
You talk about some technical things that people would like to know.
Yeah, so, well, I was going to just show some of the stuff
You
that
wanna show
I
some stuff?
actually animated in this game.
Yeah,
which
Anna
not
is now
something I
an
get to do
animator.
much.
We're going to code review a snippet.
Oh, good.
There you go. I'll give you the mouse so you can try
Yeah,
it.
so you guys, we had a logo that actually you animated in After Effects.
For the trailers.
For the trailers
Yeah.
that I really liked, and we rolled like a brand new 2D system for the game, and you know, it was like when you're doing something like that from scratch, it's a little bit, yeah, there it is. You're seeing it on the right. That's the trailer, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, like, we had during development we had like a screen with the logo and everything, and it was just like once I saw the trailer, it was like, oh, actually, our screen really sucks, and I feel very uncomfortable that we're gonna release this after like Lee's been doing all this stuff with the animation. So I actually had to kind of amp up our system. So originally I wrote a bunch of like little tweens, which are basically like if you just animate from point A to point B, a bunch of like, you know, primitive properties on something. So for instance, like scaling something from small to large or moving it from one spot to another. And I had a whole bunch of these tweens, like, you know, built up a library about them. In fact, I can show you like a really simple one, which is, here, let me navigate really quick
in the right
to,
folder?
it's actually on this thing. Sorry.
I know, we're now diving through the directory structure of double-find user directories.
Yeah,
Hackers, close your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really
Last
closed it.
cleaned out, I think, in 2004.
Or open them.
So.
Yeah. So I just want to show you this. Oh, great, it's not working.
Mm-hmm. Is this an animated GIF?
It's
or?
a save
It used to be a
icon.
big musical note.
Yeah,
It's a VLC.
Headlander started out as a musical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's on the network. It's in my everything. It's in my folder.
Where did you go? Mainframe or save icon?
Save icon. Save icons demo. It's in that folder. Well, what it is, it is that mainframe. So what it, you know, there's like this running theme in the game of kind of older technology that was around in the 60s and 70s. And what's amazing actually is that they're like a lot of the sci-fi stories that they came up with like this extremely actually primitive technology that they had was like it was really cool. And so you see in like a lot of these movies like Logan's Run, which we watched this, you know, together with the whole team, that they would have like things that kind of were reminiscent of what mainframes actually look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so
you hear like the clicks and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, it's really beautiful. But like, so we, you know, the idea was that maybe we have save icons that just kind of animate like the way that those tape drives on those old mainframes did. And so I actually did I looked at a bunch of reference material online, and I looked at the IBM 704, which actually
I like the way you say
had,
IBM. You have like a different pause there. The
Oh,
IBM.
The IBM.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, is that a weird Russian computer? What?
No.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so like, let's see. I don't know if we're seeing the video or not. Is it working, guys?
What can we learn about thinking
Oh.
from the game of chess? One challenging
Oh, yeah.
has been made
Chess.
by mathematician
Yes, that's
Dude.
it's a 46 seconds, that video, and I'll actually have it. Oh yeah, chess.
Chess.
This is a really beautiful video. It was like, I think it was a marketing video for IBM where this guy plays chess, and they were like trying to make people understand what computers are.
Can you imagine a world where that dude was the marketing figure? They're like, you know what? Everyone wants to be that guy.
Yeah. But you'll see in a second, so the weird thing about the 704 is that the tapes, the two reels moved not like a standard tape, like one would move really fast and in a direction opposite to the other one. I thought it was like, that actually was really appealing somehow. Anyway, we'll see that in just a second. Yeah, as they pan over, they're going to zoom in. He's going to zoom in, and then I'll show what those things actually look like. So that's what I animated. You see, sometimes they move in one direction, but then they'll like
They have a really
go
weird
off
rhythm
sync.
to them, like
They
a weird
do,
asynchronous
yeah.
sort of quality.
Yeah, and in fact, this was actually quite simple to animate. So if you guys have the video for the icon, that's actually in the game. Oh, it's not playing. Okay, well, those of you who are playing the game on PS4, you can actually see that. But I can show you how I did that. If you guys.
You gonna have a keyboard?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be.
It's
Maybe
like-
I should just get on the floor over there because the
Punch
keyboard
cards.
actually
I can
won't
look
reach.
it
Oh no, it won't reach. We tried this earlier.
That guy win? What happened with the rest of the chess?
It looked like he was just inventorying the pieces.
Like there's one,
Yeah,
two,
three.
that's missing.
There's all sorts of weird mystique around IBM's computer that beat the chess player because they like retired it and wouldn't let it do a rematch. That was actually kind of the basis for the Kill Queen, was that
Ah.
Oh.
it was actually a marketing sham, and it never really won because it wasn't good enough. And so it's just been sitting in a back room for a couple hundred years and came up with this like sport to torture humanity. Anyways,
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
one of those things that happens naturally. It's IBM's fault.
So okay, so this is just this is a quick, this is all Lua code, and it's just a quick library of what these actually look like. So, you know, let's say you want to seek alpha, or in our case, the two functions that are important is the wait. So you're just basically like, okay, wait this amount of time, very, very straightforward. And then we have one that's called revolve. And these are the two that I actually used to create that animation. So basically, you see these two calls right there. It's two of the same exact graphic, so it's just that like little reel. And then it calls the start animation. What I do here is I basically revolve it, and then once that's done, I play a wait like randomly. It can either revolve depending on this roll of the dice up here, the random, or it'll wait. So it'll like, you'll see it like kind of stay for like some amount of time.
I like math.random, by the way, because like seeing
Yeah.
that keyword in code is like me saying like art.purdy.
Yep.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's math, and it's
Yeah, yeah. And but this was, you know, for the logo animation, which you guys you already played it. But yeah, let's just see it for a second. So I actually recreated the logo animation just from like, you know, sort of scrubbing the trailer. I didn't have the original like After Effects file. It was just for the best, really, because I don't know how to use After Effects.
Well, my After Effects file looked like a murder scene. They're just
I'm sure.
like nested subcon.
Yeah.
Well, not, yeah. So they're quite chaotic. It's
Like a Raz PSD.
Do we play it? Should I switch? Oh, it's been playing. Okay. All right. Well, let's switch back. And I'll show Sorry.
Very.
Trying to keep this along. Just this other one. I don't know if you're interested in technical stuff like this, but I thought it'd just be cool
It's
to
very
see.
interesting.
Well, thank you, Lee. Okay, so this is what, like basically our process for getting the 2D stuff.
Logo by Corey Schmitz, by the way.
Oh, logo by Corey Schmitz.
Shout out to Corey.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful logo.
Schmitz.
Animation, though, by Lee Petty, and implementation in the game by Anna Kipnis.
No, reimagining by Anna Kipnis.
Oh, yes, reimagining.
Real-time reimagining. You got to sell
That's
it
right. So, okay, so here's the logo, and there's different bits of it that actually move during the animation. So what we had to do, thanks to Lee, is we had to cut up. Now I'm a little blind, so I'm gonna have to So you see, we had to cut up each of these pieces. So as when the L comes in that logo, we're masking it and kind of expanding the mask so that you can see, the first parts of this. And then as soon as that's all in there, or as soon as that appears, we can then show the bottom, right? And then each of these bars at the bottom are all individually cut, of course.
We have a blur version of each one too.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
and we have a blur version, which is what actually moves through the scene. Oops, here.
It's our fake motion
These
blur.
are our fake motion blurs. Yeah, that move from from left to right or right to left, so that it actually feels like there's some motion.
Yeah.
Like the VHS-y sort of artifacts or whatever that happen there, and then we have these little flares, which are made up of a background and a foreground. And what I do is actually revolve them in exactly, thank you for that sound effect. I actually revolve the little sparkle part in exactly the same way that I revolve the little tape decks. And then we also have this, which is when Ander comes in, we're actually using this graphic to where I'm unmasking, masking, pulling in the mask so that the whole Ander shows while this thing kind of just moves across the screen. And we have another one for when the L appears. So that's pretty much how it's done. And then the head, of course, when the heads first come in, I have a tween that will animate it from going from bottom to up, and then it can also tween the color. So it goes from the whatever, all the Roy G. Biv gamut from the bottom.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a very common theme.
It's like early video animation was that sort of crappy color cycling.
Yes.
Which I really loved.
So what I just described would not be possible without the sequencing tool that I made, which is basically it'll just accept, so check this out. This is what it actually looks like. This will probably be really weird for anyone who's not familiar with Lua. But each of these little pieces, just a table, a Lua table, and it could technically be, a visual tool, but I didn't have time to write that. So since I was going to be the one animating, so I just wrote this all. The entire animation is done with text.
Nice parentheses.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know it's important to you, so I made sure that this one was actually solid. All of this, I think it's something like 160 items that were typed by hand by me.
By hand, by you.
Copy
and pasted, modified.
Here, I'll go faster.
Oh my god.
That just goes to show you how much work is really in animation if you were to turn it into Lua code.
You're basically animating the text right now.
And it keeps going. Yeah, there you go. And that's the end.
So if I were to type that, Anna, I would have approximately 346 syntax errors, as Key can attest to. And Bert, I heard Bert laugh in the background. Not nice, Bert. My Lua is like a bull in a china shop. It was just like a Mack truck going right through. It was, anyways. Awesome work, Anna. It was really fun. Really good.
And it was very, thanks.
All right, what's next? Spaff is giving me hand signals. Oh, we got some.
Did
you know the British have different hand signals? So when spaff is, see, I can't tell if he's cursing at me, trying to give me a signal.
Yeah, I take offense to 20% of it.
Yeah, we've got a video.
Another video. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Well,
Q&A.
Thanks. Oh, we have a Q&A?
No. I guess we're right.
Are we off?
You guys were 3 people. The other side.
When I was 10 years old, I think, I was camping with my family, and I had some friends of the family who liked to listen to this channel called Hearts of Space. And I was just falling asleep in my tent, and they had it on like a boom box, like sitting by the fire, and all of a sudden I hear this song, and I'm just falling asleep, and I'm like, wow, there's just something about that. I'm not analyzing it. I'm not, you know, listening for chord structure, or I don't know anything about synthesis. I know nothing. All I know is that it made me just feel something. It just hit me viscerally. Everything about this score is personal to me. You know, like I'm a composer, I do orchestral stuff too and all that, but this project, it just hits me. I was commissioned to do, you know, a certain amount.
Yeah.
I've done a lot more than that. A lot more than that. It's been very interesting. Like there are different areas of the game where, you know, I'll find a sound that's really inspiring, and then I have to write. You know, I'm like, oh, that has to be in Headlander. You know, it's like that's that thing, and then screwing with it and throwing it through tape and all this other kind of stuff just to mess it up and make it as crazy as possible. That was pretty cool. It's almost like you're just going through my nostalgia. It's like opening up my head and looking at all of the composers and electronic music artists that I've dearly, dearly loved. You know, like Vangelis, when you walk through the walkways in Pleasureport, if you stop for a minute and you just listen, you'll hear Blade Runner. It sounds like Blade Runner. Very hard to follow this project up with something that is going to hit this close to home, you know? This hits that kid in me, you know, I'm 10 years old again, you know? And imagine that, you get something that just reinvigorates you. It makes you feel like, oh yeah, that's why I got into doing this, you know?
All right, we're back with new guests. We've got Dave Earl, composer on the game, who you just saw in this lovely video, and Camden, who is our sound designer here on this game. Hi! I feel like we've been talking a lot about how beautiful the game looks, but we've probably not talked nearly enough about how beautiful it sounds. It's wonderful. So lots of great music in there. It touches on some of the similar inspirations we've talked about, but also sound design from Camden, pulling everything together. You guys want to talk about how you guys got to know each other, how this came about? Because this is the first time we've worked with you on a project.
Yeah, I think, well, he did some trailer music for us on The Cave. So
he also worked on Happy Action Theater.
Yeah. So he
nice.
he had brushes. He had brushes.
Okay, so we worked with you multiple times. Yeah. But full score.
Full score. Yeah.
Full on.
Yeah.
Score.
But
and by the way, ridiculously long score. I don't say ridiculous because
yeah.
It's way more music than a game this size has any rights to have.
Yeah.
But Dave went nuts because Dave is crazy in a good way. And what is our soundtrack? How long is it right now?
It's a little over an hour and a half.
And that's
like the edited version.
No,
right?
that's an
edited down version.
Well, the thing is, it's really easy to write music that you're fiercely nostalgic for, and the aesthetic that you brought to me was kind of like, you know, it's a dream. It's like the stuff that I grew up on as a kid, and Vangelis and Wendy Carlos, and, you know, watching old Kubrick films and things like that. I mean, all of that stuff just made it really easy to be pouring it out. And then, you know, to be honest, you were kind of easy on me. Everything I sent in, you're like, yeah, it's great. Really? I'll just write another one then. So, you know, and it's just, and it's a giant love letter to everybody that I grew up listening to and who's influenced the electronic side of me. Yeah. You know, because I also do orchestral music as well, but the electronic side, I was able to just completely delve in and dive into all of those influences.
Pretty much when I talked to Dave for the first time about this, like, he started drooling. He was just like, oh. And I remember towards the end of the project.
That's good, that's what we want.
Yeah. I remember towards the end of the project, like, Dave gave us so much music and was so into it. I remember I would go and talk to you and Key, and I'd be like, hey, I just got an upload from Dave, and you'd be like, so is this it? And I'm like, no. They're just like keep being more stuff.
And it's kind of funny because honestly, you're kind of like my arranger. You know, like I was giving you all those stems. So every piece that's in Headlander is broken out. And Camden would rearrange them and reprocess them. So there are moments where you're walking outside of, say, the arrival station, you know, the arrival area, and you'll hear like these echoes of the arrival station.
Yeah.
And that's all Camden's work. I mean, he did a great job of arranging the stuff that I gave him so that it further deepens the experience of the music in the game.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome because there's a 90-minute soundtrack officially, but in the game there's a lot more than that. So it's kind of great.
You know, one of the things I loved about what you guys did was just what the total soundscape sounded like together. Like your music with like weird Cylon voice and like the stuff you did for lasers and a lot of the incidental things. I remember, even though when someone says we're going to do Cylon voice, that sounds like a really simple thing to say. But I remember we spent a long time trying to make it even remotely understandable while still preserving that sound signature we wanted, you know, and that was tricky, especially in a combat game, right?
Well, I had the hardest challenge of my career in the arena because...
You're talking about Grid Clash.
Yeah, because we had 26 characters in this game, but they're all basically robots. So I had to do 26 different kinds of robot processing. But then somebody decided that we were going to have this grid clash where they were speaking in like Shakespearean.
Yeah, the robots do a Shakespearean dialogue just for the arena.
So I'm like, Shakespearean Cylons in a firefight.
That was a sweaty phone call that I got at like 8 at night from Camden. Because Camden and I would call each other every night to check in, and Camden's like, dude, Shakespeare and Cylon voices, what do I do?
Yeah.
And it was funny because I even tried, because it's vocoding, which is, you know, technically kind of a musical thing.
Yeah.
And I send it back and he's like, nah, just hang on. And he sends me something back. I'm like, yeah, I can't beat that. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, the amount of processing that you put into those was like, and here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a giant game. There's a lot of music. You know, music is, you know, like I said, it was easy to write, and I'm letting it flow out of me. When I saw how much sound had to go into the game, it's ridiculous. This guy, like, deserves several dinners and everything else. I cannot believe.
And in lieu of that, I've given him lots of work and abuse.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll call it even.
Yeah, but it's just
works out.
But it's
works out.
And that handshake that you're talking about between composers and sound designers. I mean, one of the other absolutely unique experiences was coming in on every meeting, you know, that I could make.
Yeah.
You know, every week. If I wanted to, I could come in and check in and see what was going on.
I remember talking about that because it was like, you know, Dave and Camden would come to, we had weekly team meetings where the team would play the game and we talk about it every week. And like, to me, it seems absurd that you wouldn't have your audio folks in from the very start in all those meetings.
I
it
agree.
seemed like it was unusual.
That is why you are such a blessing to any audio person.
Yeah.
Well, it's really a
very
cheat
unique.
because, like, you know, it's like all the emotion of almost, I mean, the music and sound is so effective at that in ways that visual media aren't. And
Well,
everybody?
you also had us head in a direction that was really weird because as you go further into the game, without spoiling, like sound and music really start blurring.
Our Carpenter meter starts going up.
It gets weird.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that's really hard on other games and other teams that I've seen is the sound designers and the composers like wanting to be heard and wanting to make sure that their voice is coming through. And a lot of times there can be contention between the teams because you know, they and rightly so. They put a lot of effort into what they're doing and they want to make sure that it speaks through. But there can sometimes be these sort of battles. And it was beautiful to have a situation where Camden and I are literally on the phone all the time and I'm like, here's the key the song is in. He's like, great, I'll make sure that my ambience fixes the key of the song. You know, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, the dialogue too. We had to do stuff around the dialogue. We had to do a whole bunch of stuff because there started becoming so many layers and it was all synthesizer. Like we had to really kind of be careful about how it all fit together.
So you talk about how I crushed Dave's heart early on. And you're like, what the fuck? I was like, can we not have any drums in this game?
Yeah.
I really don't like drums at all. Like for this game, I was like, there's something about hearing a drum.
Yeah.
Even though I said it's about analog, there's something about a drum that just immediately puts the music in a place that feels wrong to me. I'm not a music person, so I have a hard time
That meeting was
articulating it.
hilarious because we were sitting there and like Dave's like, so what do you see? What's your vision? And Lee's like, well, I'm thinking no drums. And Dave's eye like starts twitching.
I mean, and here's the, but as a sound designer, you're going like, thank God.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing that happens is you have a big drum hit and an explosion. And it's like, was that an explosion or a drum hit? You know, and yeah, having no drums was hilarious. I mean, the score has drums. I mean, if you're in the Fondalarium or a place where it's appropriate, then there are some drums.
Heavy percussion appropriate in the Fondalarium.
Yeah.
But,
Lots of banging.
But like, you know, I say the score is like 80%. And the other thing too is you're like, and pretend that like, you know, IC chips don't exist. You know, pretend that you don't have samplers and all these things. And I'm like, okay. And that's when I went out and started my procurement of synths.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that a little bit, like both instrumentation and specific artists and things you pulled from for inspiration.
Yeah, so I'm incredibly lucky that I have friends who are just as like super gearheads. I went through a period where I actually stripped all my gear away, and I'm like, I need to be light on my feet. I'm gonna have a computer, and that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have everything here, and maybe I'll do some sampling. You know, oh, maybe I'll have this one little analog piece, but no, that's it. But you know, I met with a friend of mine, Jeff Taylor, who Jeff Taylor Cross, who goes by Jeff Taylor's artist name. And I went to his house, and he's like got an old Korg MS-20, which is this like old, you know, modular thing, and he's got like Moog Voyager. He's got old Yamaha CS15, which is a weird synth that most people don't know about, you know, and like just a whole collection of these things. And I've been salivating over it, and I was talking about going to the synth museum, but honestly, they just didn't get back to me fast enough. So I'm like, all right, I need to make this happen.
Yeah.
So Brian Trifon, who's worked here before, he gave me a tape machine, and so I was able to process things on tape, which I hated. Tape, I forgot how much I hated tape, but so that's used pretty sparingly. But Jeff Cross let me borrow like the Yamaha CS15, the Korg MS-20, the Voyager, and a couple of other devices. The Moog Voyager XL back there, I actually got from Frank Garvey, who's a electronic music artist and sort of he's actually sort of a San Francisco staple of the art scene, and he was there were a bunch of synths that I was able to rent from him as well, and so I have like a mono evolver. I have my own Dave Smith instruments. Dave Smith is another really amazing analog synthesizer guy.
He's right in North Beach.
Yeah, and he's right. Well, the thing is, most of these people are in the area. So this year, working on this project, I kind of had this in to talk to certain people. So it was pretty fun. I met John Chowning last year, who's like an FM guy, so it doesn't really fit in this, but it was still amazing. And Dave Smith is here, Tom Oberheim, you know, Don Bukla's over in Berkeley. Like, all these people are around. It's pretty amazing.
Well, the other thing was that Lee really gave us some really great music direction too, because like you started talking about Carpenter and you started talking about old sci-fi and looking at how they were doing this, and we started getting to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Jean-Michel Jarre and like
right.
Like,
so the beginning influences were very Jarre focused.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, there's basically, if you listen to the score, you can go right down the line and go, okay, Grid Clash. There's Wendy Carlos in there. There's a music generative system that I created on a computer where I gave it rules and it made the music. And that's in the breach when you come into the pleasure port. So that's my Brian Eno, like, I love you, Brian. And that's all processed by a computer, created by a computer. I hit a button and went and made coffee. And then there's also Vangelis. If you go into the hallways anywhere in the pleasure port, you'll hear Vangelis, my sort of love letter to Vangelis. They're just, and the thing is, like, I really dug deep and tried to figure out exactly what was going on with their music so that those influences, you know, because I want people to be re-inspired to go back and listen to those people.
And it was good too, because like you gave us like this constrained box to stay in. Like, you kind of like were honest if it was too far out of that genre or too far out of that time period. So it was really good to kind of really have a nice place to focus on and really go for a certain sound. And I think we really lucked out because you know that area very well in that area.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly lucky that I just happen to be so nostalgic.
And then like Dave just went off. I mean, I remember I got a phone call from you where I'm like, I'm starting to feel bad because you're getting us so much stuff, and you're like, well, it's kind of feeling like therapy now. Yeah. Which I thought was awesome.
Awesome. Well, we should get you on the machine. I don't know, is there a question before? Or you have a quick question before we get Dave on?
Of all the synths you used, Dave, which was your favorite?
what was your favorite synth and why?
Oh, it's funny, the SH-101.
Mm-hmm. I was going to guess that.
Yeah, my SH-101 it's so funny. It's right up there, and it's this little tiny synth, and it's actually 1983, but it's fully analog, so it fits. But I can get anything out of it. It's got a wonderful noise generator, so I can get, drum-like tones out of it. I can get lead sounds out of it. I can layer it up and make pads. It's definitely by far my quick go-to.
You can go to John Carpenter in 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Easily.
Yeah, and it has a little built-in sequencer on board. It's really, really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, one more, Spaff.
Does the game use Fmod both surround sound in 2D equals how does that work?
Okay, Camden, how does the game does use Fmod, and how does it translate surround sound to 2D? Or 2D to surround sound, I guess.
Yeah, there isn't much surround going on, so it's not really that much of a problem. Like, because this is like a 1970s game, and two, it's like, Metroid. I didn't go too crazy on surround. I did a lot of that with like ambient kind of things.
There's a lot of stereo, I guess.
There's a ton of stereo, and
well, the camera kind of frames things in almost a, basically a 2D way.
Yeah, that's actually something I thought was really interesting, was the way that you're manipulating this virtual microphone.
Yeah, that was through the brilliant work of Matt Enright, right over there, who really did some customization on the camera mic in game, and I was able to get some really great imaging, which was super cool. But honestly, the imaging, the stereo mix, any kind of surround going on is really not that complex in Headlander. It's all about textures. It's all about textures and mixing, which is apropos because that's what it was in the 70s as well. I was just really trying to find a lot of textures that happened in those films, and I found that a lot of them were just from blasting volume, which is pretty hilarious. It was just saturated.
I remember when we did the sort of story trailer where the guy goes, Headlander! And you did like, basically you were working on trying to get that sound
Zardoz, the
to
Zardoz
voice,
sound.
which was, you fucking nailed, and it was just like, I'm like, what'd you do? You're like, I just turned all the knobs up.
You get a really loud signal and you throw it into a bell chamber and you've got it.
Awesome. Yeah. Sweet. Well, thanks, guys. I think we should listen to some music. I think there's one more inspiration piece, and then we're going to get some tunes and maybe a music video, new music video.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Woo! Nice.
Should I leave the mic on, or?
Do you understand the meaning of the word privacy? Yes. Well, I need a certain amount of privacy to maintain my sanity. Privacy in the elimination of my bodily waste, for example. Privacy in sleep. Privacy in something that you don't understand, my emotional life. My love life. My sex life, then. Every night.
Rad.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, man. No, it's great. That was awesome. I think that's almost it for the show. We should probably check back in on Derek, see what he's doing over there. He's been painting. What we got? Oh my goodness.
Now you guys know where the true maturity of the game comes from. It's good.
Wonderful.
It's good. Well done, Derek. You look like such a nice guy too.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna put this up as a wallpaper so folks can download it. Awesome.
Look at all those layers just to make that dog sniff a butt. That's right. It's the power of digital tools.
A human-controlled dog butt. It probably smells the same as a normal dog butt, I guess. Awesome.
Go right to the philosophical questions, why don't you?
Yeah, you never know. Cool. Well, Headlander's out, man. Out $19.99 on Steam and PSN right now. Crazy.
Now.
Thanks for making such a crazy game, Lee. This has been fun. Everybody should go play it. It's really, really good. Anything else?
Well, thank you for tuning in and listening to us ramble, and hopefully just seeing like all the people it takes to actually make a game. There's a whole team of people behind the game, and we try to give you a sampling of different disciplines here, but there's more people who contribute to the game, and of course support from the whole company. And it's a big process. It takes a lot of people, and so we're really lucky to be able to make games here at Double Fine, and hopefully games that are memorable and that you enjoy playing. So.
For sure. Awesome. Well, we're going to send you out with a music video here. This just went out today, new music video from Dave Earl and the Headlander soundtrack. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you around.
Time is in.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Bathroom break.
Home was never safe from the entropy of time. Until we sent our souls to a tape in the sky.